Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our audience who are present in the room here and those of the audience who are still present online, we will start our final session now. Our final speaker is Jennifer Subek, who is a member of the South Sudanese National Salvation Front, NAS, and she is based in Canada, but I understand speaking to us from the United States today. And Jennifer, if you'd like to add anything further about your background, please do. And I'll pass to you and you can speak for 20 minutes or so, if that's suitable. And then we'll have a question and answer. Let us know if you need more time or less. Thank you. Over to you.
My name is Jennifer Subek. And before I actually do introduce myself, I just want to give a big thank you for Dr. Ahmed here for giving us the platform to kind of like express our views as women from Sudan and South Sudan. So my background is actually in biochemistry, and then I went on to become a nurse, and right now I'm actually a medical student. So my presentation today is about women empowerment and advocacy. Sadly, being the last person, I guess most of the points that I was actually going to tackle has already been kind of said, but I'm going to do spin on the topic using like my personal experiences. And so like I would begin like with empowerment, right? So the sad story like Sudan, and I'm going to focus mostly on South Sudan. So the plight of South Sudan has just been encountered one civil war after another. Like I remember going back to my dad. So he was the group that kind of like experienced the first Sudanese war, which is the Anyanya one. And he had to go to Uganda, right? And then right after the Anyanya one, which was actually over like 17 years, right? So then there was the Anyanya 2 and then the SPLM movement that was another 21 years. So for all this duration, like the people from the South, sadly, we are kind of like limited, right? Like education-wise, health-wise, so we never really got most of the services, right? So with that, we can't really compare like people from the South to people to the North, right? So we got independence in July of 2011, but 2 years later, again, there was an internal conflict, and then another one in 2018. So for the whole duration, like people from the South have never really gotten any respite, right? So with that, like people were able to kind of build their capacity, right? Education-wise, economic-wise, and overall, like I would say maybe not really well informed, right? So like for the people that were able to kind of like leave South Sudan to go to Khartoum or maybe to like Uganda, so people were exposed and people were like able to kind of build their capacity. So for me, speaking of women empowerment, like I kind of want to focus on my mom. So sadly, my dad passed away at a younger age, and I was raised in a single family household by my mom. So who I am today is actually attributed to like all the things that my mom did. So just going backwards to like a personal story, because how our mom raised us, she wanted us to be very independent. So during her courtship days with our dad, like our dad was affluent, promised to send our mom to England to go to school. But then once our mom got married, that dream fell apart. Like our dad was afraid she might leave, so he never really sent her abroad, right? So to an extent, that kind of like impacted my mom. And that was something that, like that was drilled in us, like, at a younger age. Like our mom would always stress the value of education and and independence, never to kind of like depend on a man. But then once you accomplish, then you would be able to do kind of everything, because then you would have the freedom, right? And to our younger viewers there, that's the message that I kind of want to pass along to, like, before you think of a man, or before you think of anything, empower yourself by educating yourself. That's if you have the opportunity. So this would actually kind of spin to another story. We've been talking about the difficulties faced by women in Sudan and South Sudan. So part of the difficulties that come are like the challenges that our women face are like some of the customary laws that were already kind of like tackled by my fellow panelists. But then a personal story, I went to Juba, and there was a close family friend who is like very influential in the government. So this is somebody who is well educated, well exposed, and well traveled. So at the time, I was actually a student here, and I do not really have the means to kind of how do I say it? Like I was like looking down to the future. Like I'm a student right now. Like all I'm focusing in is school, but then I wanted to build a structure, right? So then I contacted this fellow and I asked whether it's actually possible to get loans from the government, right? And then he told me, what do I need the money for? Then I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of building a structure, right? Put the structure on rent, and then the rent money would actually take care of the loan that I took from the government. So the story he told me is like, why would you want to do that? Why don't you wait and get married, and then your husband would actually provide all your needs? So then I laughed. Then I'm like, oh, well, why do I actually have to wait for a man to do that for me? Why don't I actually start something myself, and then the man would meet me where I'm at, right? So the sad story about this experience, we talk about being limited as women, and this is somebody who is well-traveled, well-educated, right? I would think like through the exposure, this is somebody who would actually develop me, right? But then on the contrary, this is actually somebody who is reminding me that I have to get married before I actually get access to all these things, right? And then another story, I went down to South Sudan, like I wanted to kind of get like an experience working with an NGO, like for like about 3 months. Next thing I was told, oh, you shouldn't be dressing like this. I want you to meet me at this office. Like I guess it was at the time, it was director of Juba Teaching Hospital. So the girl is, oh, this is an old fellow, married with several wives. But then the catch was, now they wanted to introduce me to this fellow so I could get married to this fellow because he doesn't have a wife from our tribe, right? So when I had that, I laughed and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be there tomorrow. But then when tomorrow came, I never actually showed up, right? Because again, I felt like somebody was setting limitations on me, limitations that I don't have for myself, right? So when we talk about like the challenges that women face in South Sudan and Sudan, those are some of the things that our women are actually going through that needs to kind of be made aware of, right? So we talk about so the sad story is like the fellow was actually very mad and consulted my mom about what I had done, right? But then to me it doesn't really bother me because I have my own plans. Like I felt the right way to do it is to kind of talk to me, find out what I'm doing, what my ambitions are, right? Rather than kind of imposing somebody else's value that I actually don't hold for myself. So anyway, so this is just kind of like, I guess, some of the things that I would like to kind of like speak about, just to kind of like open our women's eyes, right? Like even right now we're in Canada, we're in the US, but then some of our fellow women are like back home, and these are some of the challenges that they are going through, right? So if we actually use this platform, use our voice to kind of like create awareness of what's going on, I think that would be great. And I've been going through articles and studies like, women, UN women, the Maputo Protocol, the Benjin Women Declaration, and I've actually gone through like studies about Arab Revolution. And it's just like the same recurring theme that comes along. Like usually women would do all the background work. But then when it comes to the final stage, the foremost stage, the decision making, they are always excluded. So as women today, like how would I put it? Like as women, I think we have to kind of like use our voice to kind of like stand for ourselves. We don't really have to kind of just support people blindly that are not there for us. And then like even for today, two of our colleagues, is it Nyankuth and Susan? They're supposed to be presenting today, but they are not here. And I'm assuming they're actually maybe in Juba right now, right? Because we've talked about like the progress that's being done in South Sudan. That's well said, but I think for me, it's actually progress on paper, right? Because with the CPA and the revitalized peace agreement and all that, there was that 25% quota system that was allocated for women. That's all good. But then the thing is, when you actually see what's happening in South Sudan right now, there is instability, right? There is land grabbing. We talk about violence against women, like women being raped, right? And it's sad that I'm actually not hearing this today. All we are talking about is like women progress, women that, what about like all those people, the realities that are on the ground? How come we're not really addressing those realities, right? So South Sudan, yes, independence, right? So we talk about, oh, post-conflict reforms. For me, I think the case in South Sudan is not really a case of post-conflict reform. I think it's a case of post-conflict swindling. Because when we see countries like Rwanda, like back in 1994, they had actually the genocide and all that, and they took it upon themselves to actually really do some restructuring. All this time, like, you know, Rwanda has been peaceful. They've actually invested in their people, right? And right now they're actually benefiting or reaping the returns of those investments, right? But then when you compare South Sudan, for the longest time, people were like saying, oh, you know, like we're being oppressed, we want this. It's like, okay, the international community has rallied behind South Sudan. They've done everything, right, to kind of like ensure that, oh, like, you know, the South got their independence. But now what after the independence? What have we done? To me, actually, it's kind of like a shame, because when we see places like Bosnia, when like the international community like rallied against Bosnia and all that, they learn from their lesson and there is peace. Like there is nothing going on in Bosnia right now. So right now it's like South Sudan, for the longest time, it's like several years of war. Like when are we going to kind of learn from our mistakes? We can't be coming crying like to the international community, come help us, come help us. Like it's not about South Sudan the whole time. Like when you see like the whole world, there is a lot of like problems going on, right? Like right now, it's Ukraine, it's the Palestine and Israel, right? So I think we kind of have to like use our voice to kind of put our leaders to account, because once we get the help that, you know, we requested, let's learn from it, let's change, let's not like regress all the time, right? Because like with South Sudan now, it's just kind of like recurring war after war, war after war. Like right now, like what is it, like I think even it's a shame, like, you know, with South Sudan, what we hear, it's a failed state. And indeed it's a failed state. When we got like our independence, like what our leaders were supposed to do was to kind of build the nation, focus on like what is it, infrastructure, you know, the hospitals, health, education and all that, right? Just kind of like build the capacity of our people. But then sadly our leaders don't do that. Whatever, I think our leaders are actually more focused on themselves. So right now when you see, oh, somebody is sick, it's sick in South Sudan, what did they do? Oh, I'm flying abroad, right? And flying abroad, it's sad. It's actually not their own money that they're using. This is the nation's money that they're using, that they could actually put in to build a hospital, right? What about for like the layman person in South Sudan? If they get sick, where are they going to get the money to go abroad? Right? So like, I think instead of just like, you know, oh yeah, the leaders, they're doing this, they're doing that, we have to change. We have to do better for our citizens, right? And like right now, I think, so the South Sudan doesn't really, I don't even consider it as a sovereign nation, right? Because again, instead of like developing like the infrastructure, like the resources and all that, what did they do? People just kind of like misuse the money, the funds are being mismanaged. Like right now we are hearing is like, oh yeah, the leaders are in problem. Let's run to like Uganda. Let's get like the Ugandan army to kind of like, come in to kind of support the leaders, to support them so that they would be in power, right? Like, so in South Sudan, it's like most of our people, like, they don't really get their salaries on time. So if I have to send my child to school, but I haven't been paid in years, so how am I going to afford the school fees? So there is no, like when you go like around in the embassies, like we hear that, oh yeah, the embassies are being like closed because what? They haven't actually paid their rent. Isn't that actually a shame? Right? So now, like right now, there is money available to go get the UPDF to like pay off the Ugandans so they could actually come and help help the leading party stay in power. Like, I think it's actually ironic that you're using the money to kind of pay other people to keep you in power when your citizens are actually suffering, right? Like, wouldn't it be better to use that money to kind of like pay your own citizen, right? Have like the infrastructure, right? Because once you kind of like build the capacity of your people, right? Then of course, everybody is going to kind of like, how do I say, your legacy is going to be strong because you're providing for your people. And in that case, then we wouldn't be worrying about all this instability here, there, and all that, right? So, so for me, I think we kind of have to like talk about, I think right now the time is kind of ripe. We shouldn't just be using our voices. Like, when we hear that, oh yeah, like there is progress, there is how many women in parliament. I think, this parliamentarian, they have to be the voices of the people. We've been talking about, oh, there is a disconnect between the cities and the rural communities. When we use our education, I think we should use that education as a gap to kind of like bridge the gap between the capital and the rural areas. Like, our people in the rural areas are counting on us, right? So if we just go to the parliament and kind of like, don't speak up, who is going to speak up for those people in the villages? Right. So, and I think even with the progress, like, oh, we have like, I don't know, somebody was saying 93 women in parliament, right? Like, honestly, I think to me, it's most of those people actually, because like in South Sudan, there is a case of nepotism, right? We hear that Rebecca Garang, right? She was actually part of the revitalized agreement of resolution of conflict of South Sudan, right? So she was a part of it. And then from there, she was actually elected as one of the vice president, right? So, okay, you're like, how come you're not representing the women? We see the cattle herders, they're like from the Boer community, they go and attack other communities, but the government doesn't say anything. So where is the government in that? Right? We talk about the UPDFs attacking, like, invading like border towns, right? So we have like people from those border towns like running to their government, but the government is silent. Nobody's actually coming in to kind of help them. So where's the government in that? Like, how can I be proud or speak to like a government that's never there for their people, right? So I think we have to kind of like, how do I put it? So we talk about being excluded and all that. Like, I think our voice is actually powerful, and we have to kind of learn to use our voice to kind of like support those that would bring like real change, right? We shouldn't just be party loyalties, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm elected, and oh, you can't say anything because, oh, once I say something, like, I'm going to be sacked. Like we've seen in South Sudan, the president comes with one degree after another. People would be like put in the office, next thing you're out, right? So I think most of our elected officials, they are not there for the people, because I think, to me, with what's happening, people are actually afraid to kind of speak up their minds because they will be sacked, right? So if you're going to be, so like, I think there is no point being there if you're not going to kind of like speak up for your people, because if you're afraid you're going to be sacked, what's your legacy for tomorrow? Right? So I think with with what's going on. And then I guess just speaking also to people from the north, like Khartoum, right? So I think, this is all like, sharing ideas, right? So in the north, like, you've actually kind of just recently, been going into wars and all that. So like, I think maybe at the end of the day, our fates are actually intertwined, right? So people in the south are champions of living in instability. So maybe like, how people have survived and all that. These are like information they can communicate to people in the north, like, how did they manage all these years, right? And I don't know what to me, like, I think pretty much that's it for today. So if there are like any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks. And you were very animated and brought some smiles and laughter, which is a good thing in the afternoon. So I'll invite anyone online or in the room here to ask questions.
Jennifer, thank you for answering. Really, I mean, it was really excellent. Yeah.